So now let's start first with Gabby and ask you, what would a learning world look like to you if it were perfectly built? Would it be virtual, real? What would it look like?
Well, it would certainly look very different from what we're seeing out today. It looks more like agricultural, industrial age, classroom-centric, textbook-centric. Yet if you take a look at how children learn and how they communicate and how they do teamwork and collaborate, they already use technology, and it's absolutely not embedded in the way that we teach. So when we look at different industries and how they have fundamentally transformed, take a look at finance, entertainment, media, communications. Information technology has fundamentally transformed the way we do all of that. Yet you take a look at education, and it just hasn't found its way into really making the education more immersive, more collaborative, and providing more access. We heard that before. So what we're working on with leading universities in the world is looking at not only providing online access to people and to students, but how to make this online studying experimental and turn it into an experience. And just one example, we've come up with a software that's called eLab. And right now, as we speak, so this is not 10 years from now, this is now, we have a lot of children sitting in African countries, in Kenya, for example, and all they have is internet access, and they have a PC, and they can do real-time experiments. So they do physics experiments and chemistry experiments, and the labs are thousands of miles away. But they sit at the PC, they add a little bit of temperature and a little bit of water, or you name it, and the experiment is happening. It's not a simulation, it's very, very different. So talking about sustainability, talking about utilization of what exists already and sharing resources, that's a great way of making online not just something you read on a screen, but something that you can really absolutely experience.
Well, Rajesh, that feels a very long way away from the school that we learned about last night, which is a very holistic, family-based idea for people, many of whom have never had any contact with education. Can you identify with the world that Gabby is describing?
Well, fortunately, I can, being amongst the fortunate one who have been able to walk through this journey and through this lane. But to my mind, when we talk about our project, we talk about the marginalized children who are not fortunate enough to have access to technology, to have access to many other issues which the urban children in the urban towns and urban areas get. So to me, while virtual schools has been talked about for a very long time, it cannot in any which way substitute or replace the physical schools. Because also I believe that it is the interaction, it is the touch and feel. When you interact, talk to each other, is a great learning experience in itself. So when we talk about our village schools, and I go back to the rural India, the electricity is not available. So how do you even talk about providing a digital content? I mean, we sometimes struggle that as and when the power comes in, we bring the children into a computer class and try to maximize their knowledge. Having said that, we have been innovating in a way that our teachers are learners for life. So we are training them on the job, who in turn are trying to make those children who they teach learners for life. But more importantly, I think the teachers are acting more as mentors, as facilitators who are teaching these children not only education, but also values. They are connecting them to communities through innovative projects. As a matter of fact, today, my 38,000 children are change agents in the communities they live in, because that's what they see. That's the world they have seen so far. So in a way, I do understand what Gabby is saying, but real world out there, for especially countries like India and rural India, is absolutely a different landscape and perspective.
Rakesh, thank you. I want to go to the other end of the equation, to higher education. Binky Zhang, how do you see things? You probably chime a little closer to what Gabby's been saying.
I think it's a big theme building a learning world for Chinese higher education. The size is 30 million. It's the first when you're talking about the numbers of the students, but it's not covered all the students. Today is only 26% of the youth can go to universities. So now it's very important to build a kind of a network besides the universities. China announced a project, Open University. It's the biggest open university. It's 3.6 million students is when we use the distance learning. And it's very good for the remote learning, for the remote areas. And today we have a plan, and it aims to encourage the universities to publish open their courses to share with the other universities and to share these resources with the society. And I think it's very good to democratize the education, but it's also very important to increase the quality.
I think I'm somewhere in between. Gabi was speaking of this high-tech world. Mita was speaking about high-touch world. I think education is much about high-touch, a bit about high-tech. Chung was speaking about higher education. There's basic education. I think we speak about very many extremes, okay? What I believe is that we might have a world in the future. I foresee a future where you might have learning materials, knowledge objects everywhere, every time. Kind of utility. Press a button, you get electricity. To open a tap, you get learning materials. It's not enough, because people are not learning objects. People are learning subjects. You need a lot of high touch. You need to have people to be mentored. You have teachers, good teachers who are empowered, who are trained to do that. So a new job to facilitate the path of the student to learning. You've got to have some interaction between children. Schools are social institutions. You have to play, you have to get together with others and learn. I think it would be monstrous to imagine a world where each child will be individually before a screen. It's monstrous. I think you have to have children playing together. I can see a lot in higher education coming together. We do a lot of e-learning and blended learning as well in our country. We try to group people. We try to mix, get them through some e-learning and get them in small groups in classrooms, some teaching once a week on Saturdays. So it's a blended thing. I think we're moving towards a mixed, a blended thing, not only a one typical. The other thing we have to have competent learners. We imagine a lifelong learning world. We have competent learners who can self-regulate their learning. We can't have a teacher behind each citizen. Competent learners who learn at school, learning to learn, the seduction learning, the drive to learn, and learn the basic competences of self-regulation, metacognition, meta-motivation, all that. Okay.
I want now to put a challenge down to all four of you, and you first. Take us 20 years forward. Yeah. What is the learning world going to look like in 20 years' time?
I think we're at an inflection point, and I really think that a lot of now a lot of the benefits, because we've proven them over the last 2 or 3 years, can be seen, and that usually does make a difference. And we are at a point where, with cloud and mobility and the connection between the two of them and the devices, the proliferation of devices out there, you have a different way to access information. And I know not everybody, but increasing numbers of students and people that, lifelong learning for that matter, have access to these devices. And the cloud enables us to work with these different IT application engineers, these different NGOs, different folks that are interested in creating social applications. And I think that's extremely forward-thinking, but it's already, to some steps, we're already there.
Isn't there a possibility that if you move into the world that Gabi is actually describing, there's all sorts of free thinking may start developing, and that could be a challenge to the people who organize the entire system.
The learners are changing, their needs are changing, so maybe it's not very open yet, but the needs required more openness, so it's also a process. So I believe with the openness of the web and the openness of the country, and I think everything will improve.
Well, I foresee a world that's ever more complex. And education is a complex business. Therefore, the response to complexity is self-organization, self-regulation. I foresee a role state in quality assurance and standards. You have to have some regulation there, but basically it's self-organization. So I must say I foresee a world where there's semantic technology delivering learning materials everywhere, every place. I see a lot of educators as mentors, as scaffolders, as teachers to help these students find meaning in their ways through these materials.
What will your world have done to the rural communities that Rakesh is reaching in his much more...
I think it's great to have rural communities have access to all this without losing their basic qualities and basic values, I think.
I feel that in the developing world, it is time for all of us to put pressure on ourselves, our governments, everybody around us, scientists, to produce some form of power generation, be it solar, be it any other, so that our children can use the devices to partake in this brilliant world that technology has opened up for them.
If I take the concept of education as anything that happens in any interactions that we have among ourselves, and if I take the learning situation, that's something that can happen on this interaction, and at the same time, education not only something that happens in four walls or something called school, what will be the most fundamental values as human beings that this new paradigm of education and learning will have to bear in mind for the future generations?
You know, I think the one very quick answer is renewable energy. But the matter of fact is every time we talk of technology and new innovative products, price becomes a big barrier. And I believe when we talk of solar energy, the solar panels are still very costly. And for me to invest in solar panels, I would rather extend that money to bring more students into my school.
Yeah.
And wait for the power to come, because ultimately I just cannot keep on spending the money. I'm not the government. Having said that, when I look at my K-12 schools, of course, I mean, we have backup electricity there, so their children get power as and when it is required. But having said that, I think the most important question, which was the last one, to me, education without values has no meaning. To me, any technology, any innovation which cannot go and benefit the society has no meaning.
If the same materials, the same opportunities, the same choices are being available essentially across the world, what happens? Do you reach a kind of globalized community in which the fundamental values are shared across the world? Is it a breakdown of borders? Is it a breakdown of national systems? Or do all those things remain integral to the education despite the fact that there's so much choice and availability?
John, I resist a one cultural world, a one language world. I think the wealth of the world is its richness in diversity, okay? So I don't see that technology is rolling over the world and making a flat world. I believe in a round world, okay? This is what we're celebrating here, diversity here. Part of our values is imparting our children the value of diversity, valuing difference, making children understand that the other person is no other than the other half of myself. I only reach completeness if I reach out the other person. This is a personal value. Let me say something about content now. We live in the world of OERs, Open Education Resources. I work with the Latin American, Guatemala, Mexico on Clarice. You heard about Clarice? It's a system of open education resource for all higher education in Latin America. But that's supply side again, supply side, supplying. It's not through supply side you're going to resolve the problem. Let me move slightly away from this technology bias we've been induced into this conversation. Let me say that education is basically a human-to-human interaction, human-to-human interaction. Basically, that's the fundamental core of education. And a good educator, a good parent, educate your children, a good educator is a person who is able to make your children's or your students' eye shine. You have to spark that shine. You have to do that inner journey with your children. They can spark. That's education.